So it's so great to be back. And good morning. This week's Parsha starts a new discussion within the Torah. In the past, what we've been speaking about is really specifically the issues of Vayikra, and in Vayikra we read very much so about the korbanot and that manner of coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in this week's parsha, we start something really new and something so interesting. And the way that the parsha of Tazria is well known as being a parsha that speaks specifically about the issues that come across through Lashon Hara, through speaking ill about other people. And so therefore, what we have in this week's parsha is a focus of Tazria and Metzora, both the leprosy as it's called, but it's really not leprosy, it's a spiritual affliction, the leprosy of Tazria, as well as the Metzora, as what you're supposed to be doing with the person who actually gets that terrible affliction. But before it starts that, the Torah begins this week's parsha with the concept of Tazria, which is the concept of a woman giving birth to either a male child or a female child, all the different issues of Tumah and Tara, of purity and impurity that specifically speak about that as a result of birth, speaks about Brit Milah as well. And then it immediately starts speaking about Lashon Hara. And the question is, what is the connection? What's the connection between birth and then Lashon Hara? So Rabbi Tatz, in his book World Mask, explains that the human body is divided up into the upper part and the lower part. We know when we also have seen the Hasidim that they wear this thing called a gartel. Why do they wear a gartel? The gartel separates in tefillah between the upper part and the lower part. The upper part is driven by the brain, by the head, and the lower part is driven much more by the sexual forces of the human being. So, explain to Rabbi Tatz that the lower world of the body, the output that comes from that is a chant. Whereas in the higher world of the head, the output is words. So we understand that children are the outward expression of the body of the parent. So to words, the words that we speak are the outward expression of the mind of the speaker. And if that is the case, explains Rabbi Tatz, such a beautiful idea, we need to remember that the words that we speak, when we communicate, we create Talmidim. If a person is listening to our words and hearing our words, they become our Talmidim. They take the words that we take and they learn something new from that, and therefore they become like students. And we understand how powerful that is, because in Halacha, the power of the Rebbe, of the teacher over the parent is so much greater, to the extent that Chas v'Chalila, a person sees his father and his Rebbe, person who's learned all his Torah from, drowning. Who does he have to save? So the halach is there. So actually has to save the Rebbe. Why? Because as the Gemara says, the father brings the son into this world, but the Rebbe, the teacher, brings him into the next world. And so therefore we see, in actual fact, that the creation of souls, the creation of Talmidim, is even a more profound act, says Rabbi Tatz, more creative, significantly creative act than the physical counterpart of creating children. They find themselves also a similarity in the Zohar, where the Zohar explains that we have to be careful that we don't waste even our Torah words. Because why? It says the Gemara that if we're teaching someone who's not fit to be a Talmud, somebody who's not able to take in the Torah in what we're trying to teach over, it's similar to the sin of, the way he explains it, of wasting the power of intimacy. Both constitute a wasteful spilling of deep creative energy. So we see that speech is a basic tool of creation and revelation. It's the hallmark of the human being, and therefore its misuse is particularly devastating. The Alei Shur takes this one step forward, one step more, and so powerful. And what he says is the following, quoting from a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. He says, Rabbi Chananya ben Tradyon Omer, Shnaim sheyoshvim v'yesh b'neim divrei Torah, Shechina shruya b'neim. That when two people are sitting and learning Torah, the Shechina, Hashem's presence, vests between them. When there's Torah between two people, Hashem comes down and vests himself in between those two people. Ah, what happens if I don't have two people? What happens what happens if even the one person is learning Torah? We're learning Torah on our own. Am I still feeling a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Says the Mishnah, person learns on themselves if they fulfill the whole Torah. However, the Maharal points out that when two are learning and there's divrei Torah between them, that's when it says that the Shekhinah vests between them. But the one person, he has an incredible reward. The whole Torah is his Torah, but he doesn't get the Shekhinah. Why is that? Says the Maharal. When two people are learning, they are speaking words of Torah. That's considered to be the complete Torah. Came. However, this is not true. When one person is learning, there's no dibur, there's no speech, there's no interaction in that with another person. And if that's all, he's going to speak, he's learning on his own. That's not considered to be Torah Shlema, complete Torah. The presence of Hashem vests within Torah Shlema. Nimtza ki hashchina shoyre dafka b'dibur b'Torah, that the Shechina vests when they is speaking of Torah, and that's why it says ki hakoyach hadibur hu hamachshir lechibur dveikus. The power of speech is the thing that brings chibur and dveikus, connection, cleaving to one another. We learn from this. The way to connect most profoundly with Torah is by speaking in Torah. He says from here we can understand how destructive Lashon Hara is. He says because the power of speech gives us the ability to connect, to come closer, to cleave to one another. And the person who speaks Lashon Hara uses that thing that we are given to connect, to create, to become close to one another, for richuk, for distance, for period, for separation, and for hatred. When a person uses their mouth for the wrong thing, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaves his Shekhinah, is the presence of Hashem that has been vesting in this world, moves milamaita lamaila, from the bottom to the top. In other words, from this world goes back up into Shamayim, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels free. Why? Ki hashchina tachlis hakiru v'hayahava. How the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence, is the tachlis, is the very essence of coming together, the very essence of love, of warmth, of connection with one another. When a person uses the things that are supposed to bring things closer, to bring love, to bring connection, but they're used for separation, for hatred, there's no place for the Shekhinah in this world. And through the Avera, the terrible words that we could be speaking Lashon Hara about one another, says the Alei Shur, the Shekhinah is mistalekes Israel. The Shekhinah removes itself from the Jewish people. During this time of the Omer, where we understand that Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 pupils died, Shelon Hagu Kavod Zelazeh, one of the Mefarshim explains that doesn't mean that they didn't show honor for one another. Lo Hagu Kavod Zelazeh is that when one would speak Torah, the other one wouldn't listen. He wouldn't engage with him. He wouldn't allow that to bring him closer. Even if he disagreed with it, he wouldn't. It just was irrelevant to him. He just poo-pooed that opinion. When we poo-poo another person's opinion, then there's no connection. And so therefore, during this time, as we go for the next few weeks, building towards Matan Torah, Torah Shalema, the way we should do that is by speaking correct words and listening to the words that others have to say. Have a beautiful day, everybody.